Hello everyone. Let us now talk about another very important topic in this series of lecture on nationalism and constitutional growth in India, 1858-1920. In many of the previous lectures, I have been talking about the East India Company's establishment to the revolt of 1857 and many revolts which Indians took up against British domination, British hegemony over Indian people is precisely because of the fact that the rule by the East India Company was very extractive and it was very unhealthy for Indian masses. East India Company, is we all know came to 16th century, 1600, and established their ruling regime in the country after taking advantage of the existing regional and cultural disparities. Over time, the Indians realized their resources were being looted and they were being undermined in their own country. Soon after this realization, the Indians started revolting against British rule, and the British felt compelled to incorporate new challenges and incorporating new changes in order to press down the rebellions. So as we have been talking about that how time to time many charter act were introduced, starting from 1833, which introduced a fourth member, law member, who was authorized to sit and vote in the council of the Governor General for legislative purposes. Another major change incorporated by the charter was vote in the council of the Governor General for legislative purposes. And also the change was to incorporate power structure of the presidency council as they were deprived of their independent authority. Now, the charter which was introduced by British in 1853, under which the law member was given the authoritative position of member of the council of the Governor General, and the number of the council members was increased to be 6. Now, be mindful that 1853, was the charter which basically increased the number of council members to 6. So 6 is the number, and then gradually by 1861 and also by 1892, further numbers were increased. Apart from being a lawmaking body, the council was entrusted with the responsibility of handling the grievances as well. So this is the background of Indian Councils Act 1892. If we see that the Indian Councils Act or Government of India Act 1858 and Indian Council Act 1861, these acts were indeed brought by the British Raj, basically to curb many of the resentment, resistance, and grievances, by the Indian people. As parallel socio-religious reform movements were going on, and in between the revolt of 1857, though a failure which opened the eyes of the British government, they believed that the revolt took place because of a lack of communication between the colonial government and the Indian authorities. As a measure to curb further uprisings, the British government came up with the Indian Council Act of 1861, which sought to improve the medium of communication between the colonial government and the Indian authorities. Now, one of the major changes introduced through this act was that the number of additional members in the Governor General's Council was to be mandatorily not less than 6 and not more than 12 in numbers. So now, 1861 has increased, the number from 12. So it should be it should not be less than 12. So that's the idea. Now, if we go by some of the other informations behind Indian Councils Act 1892, we also see that these additional members were to be nominated by the Governor General itself for a period of 2 years. So Governor General has now nominating power through 1861. One half of the additional members, as we were talking about in the last segment, one half of the additional members were supposed to be not from the military or crown service background, which we called it non official members, right? Non-official members. That's very important. Now, usually, three Indians were nominated in the council. If we see that the government of Bombay and Madras were restored to power, which we also call it this decentralization through 1861 Indian Councils Act. However, the misuse of the loopholes present in the Indian Council Act of 1861 was identified to a very large extent. The officials nominated the Indians who helped them during the 1857 revolt, and often the princes, diwans or big landowners were allowed to enter the council. So it was in a way, it was in a way a prize. It was a prize given to who helped, British East India Company or British Raj, basically, in curbing the 1857 revolt. Even after the presented criticisms, the move was celebrated as the step that made the Indians feel those who helped, military officials, they were kind of given the entry in the council. Also, even after the presented criticisms, the move was celebrated as the step that made the Indians feel that their opinions were valued. So, in a way, the important point of Indian Council Act is, in a way, that Indians were able to opinionating on important issue. That's one of the very important kind of contribution, because they were allowed to be heard in the council. So Indian Council Acts, if we see, in a way, Indian Councils Act, prior to the one of the major event prior to Indian Councils Act 1892 is 1885, where Indian National Congress was established. If we see the establishment of Indian National Congress, which started meeting annually to discuss about the issues and challenges and the political implications of the various kinds of acts issued by the British Parliament. The deliberations and debates and discussion in the annual meetings of the Indian National Congress were very crucial, which mounted pressure on the British government, and ultimately that led to various changes, various policy changes, which ultimately led to Indian Councils Act 1892. Richard Assheton Cross, who introduced this Indian Councils Act 1892, where the territorial extent, uh, you know, territories came under the direct control of the British Crown. This was enacted by Parliament of the United Kingdom. Uh, the royal assent was given on 20th June 1892, and ultimately, the 3rd February was the date on which Indian Council Act was commenced, and Government of India Act 1915 repealed Indian Councils Act. Now, what was the background? As I said, that the background was the formation of Indian National Congress. There was a growing feeling of nationalism, and this led to the Indian National Congress to put forth some demands to the British authorities. Uh, One of their demands was the reform of the legislative councils. They also wanted the principle of the election, instead of nomination. So, principle of representation, that what it is popularly called. Uh, you know, Indian National Congress also wanted the right to hold discussion on financial matters, which was hitherto not allowed. Uh, the the Viceroy at the time was Lord Differin, who set up a committee to look into the matter, but the Secretary of State did not agree to the plan of direct elections. He, however, agreed to representation by way of indirect elections. So, in a way, uh, you know, the very important events which happened prior to 1892 Council Act was that there were several kind of amendments to the composition and function of Legislative Council, which previously was set up by 1861 Indian Council Act. So further we move, where we see that there is expansion of central and provincial councils. There's increased members in the Governor General's Council from 12 to 16. As I said previously, that not less than half were required to be non-officials. The non-officials were those who did not have any background of military or other kind of government experiences. So they were supposed to be Indians by and large, or the commoners. Uh, Further, because of the establishment of the Indian National Congress, that what we also see that it gave a resurgence of the nationalist movements by the time Indian National Congress was formed. We have a very concerted, social movements which had a political kind of connotations. I mean, it was enacted in 1892 after 7 years of formation of Indian National Congress. Uh, Means that Indian National, the Indian Councils Act in a way acknowledges the fact that the Indian National Congress movement, the nationalist movement across India, is in fact a very very important kind of pressure group which is going to put forth the demands for the reform and various other policies of political representation in the council, which Indian National Congress did, and which resulted into several reforms from 1892 Indian Council Act to Parliamentary reforms later on to Montego Chelmsford reform. This all were in a way reforms one by one where Indian National Congress's activities need to be acknowledged. Uh, if we see that in the Governor General's Council, which was I mean, composition with 9 ex officio members, 6 official additional members, and 10 non-official members were added. The expansion to include members from newly established legislative councils in Punjab and Burma was also in a way kind of put on the table, which we see that the provincial legislative councils also got changed heavily by Indian Councils Act 1892, which kind of introduced the official majorities in provincial legislative councils. The provinces had a varying number of additional members in their legislative councils. This particular act increased the number of additional non-official members in the legislative councils. For an example, the Central Legislative Council was expanded from 10 to 16 members. Bengal was added with 20 members, Madras 20 members, Bombay 8 members, Awadh had 15 members, Northwestern Frontier Province or Northwestern Province had 15 members. So in 1892, if we see, the membership of Indians were out of 24 members, only 5 were, Indians, and that's kind of, minority. But one of the positive sign of this act was representation principles. If we see recommendations of the this act, it allowed for the recommended members from universities, district boards, municipalities, zamindars, and chambers of commerce. So in a way, council was empowered to recommend these members. And this introduction of representation principle, despite the absence of direct election, has a very very positive role. As I said, that Indians were allowed to speak only by the act of speech and participating in the debate, raising the issues of suffering and subjugation, and also reminding their bosses or the colonial masters that they are in fact being very harsh on Indian people by not giving certain kind of resources of survival, and sort of extracting their resources and developing their country. This is not going to be remaining for a longer period of time, and people have been awakened now. People are now conscious about the double standard of your rule, and hence we are going to fight to tooth and nail to oust the British Raj. So these kind of languages used in the legislative councils, I just said central legislative council to the provincial legislative council, the recommended members plus also the other members, they their activities in a way, though they were not directly elected, but even this representation principle benefited to voice their opinion. Now, there was also relaxation and restrictions. For an example, earlier, members were not allowed to, ask questions on, important matters like financial, budget, but they were now councils, in a way, allowed to discuss annual financial, statements with Indians. So introduction of the right to put question on matters of public interest were also in a way one of the kind of relaxation in terms of relaxation on restrictions. So members were given the right to ask question on the budget, which was barred in the Indian Councils Act 1861, or matters of public interest, but had to give notice of 6 days for it. But then they were not allowed to ask any kind of supplementary questions. If the one who is presenting the financial budget, if he has reflected on the question by answering once, then there will be no query further on the response. So that supplementary question was still very restricted. Uh, Lastly, because this act was very very crucial, which paved the way for further kind of political representation by incorporating into its fold, by enlarging the scope of the council, as well as also reforming in terms of policies and politics. It introduced indirect elections and also special references in the further Council Act of 1909. Also, this Indian Councils Act 1892 was the first step towards a representative form of government in modern India. Although there was nothing in it for the common man, the number of Indians was increased, and this was a positive step. However, since the British, conceded only a little, this act led indirectly to the rise of many revolutionary movements in India. Many leaders like Bal Gangadhar Tilak blamed Congress's moderate policy of petitions and persuasions for a lack of positive developments, and called for a more aggressive policy against British rule. And this in a way led to the emergence of revolutionary politics in India, where the Indian National Congress was divided into two parts. One were called moderates, and the others were called extremists. Because one was, Indian National Congress was going moderate precisely because petitions and persuasion, were in a way required initially, considering the fact that the revolt of 1857 was not supported by majority of the Indians, number one, and also having the resources for India a kind of India-centric or rather pan-India movement was also in a way a very grim possibility. So the criticism of the Indian National Congress by Bal Gangadhar Tilak or Lala Lajpat Rai or Bipin Chandrapal, these leaders, of course, Aurobindo later on became part of that. Uh, you know, they were kind of very convinced that the petitions and persuasions will not bring any positive change, and gradually the British Raj, in whatever reforms is introducing, is not really a larger kind of reforms. It's a very gradual and it's a very minor kind of reforms which they uh, they are not allowing to be have a self rule or Swaraj, and this is against the idea of Swaraj. So we have to fight, against British Raj instead of petitioning and demanding. It is not something kind of we are begging for independence. It is our right, and that was the reason that various kinds of slogans that what we see that I mean, Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. Which means that we are not folding our hands and begging for the independence of our nation. Rather, it is our birthright. I mean, who is basically British Raj to kind of holding on our self rule or the right to self determination or independence, right? So in a way, the I mean, both sides in a way had certain kind of valid reasons. As I said, that 1857 story was very fresh memory in the minds of leaders of the Indian National Congress. On the other hand, the leaders from the extremist side were convinced that now we are having kind of pan India kind of movement in terms of social religious reform movements, but also some kind of national consciousness has been generated thanks to Indian National Congress, but also kind of cross-border solidarity coming from United States and other places. Like, people are now much informed, and hence we are going to have a very concerted, strategic kind of protest and movements, and ultimately will be able to kind of free India from British rule. So, in that sense, 1892 was criticized, because Indian National Congress with Bal Gangadhar Tilak and others also, because Indian National Congress was blamed, but Indian National Congress also heavily criticized the Act of 1892 in its session held in the years 1892 and 1893. It was very distressed over the fact that direct elections were not being introduced in the country. Now, almost after 1858, it's almost 35, 40 years around. The direct rule by the British Parliament. Now, British Parliament, when company was ruling, of course, company was ruling because it was much of a company of a private players. Now, the government of England, the British government is ruling directly from the British Parliament. Now, when they are in fact talking about democracy and talking about natural rights and rule of law in their own country, what is taking too longer not to inform, or rather introduce direct elections in India. I mean, what is stopping them to basically introduction of the direct elections in India? And in that sense, Indian National Congress was in fact very critical of Indian Councils Act, 1892, because the recommendations or the representation were very limited, and also it was not at all that people were kind of participating in the electoral process. So, yet, the Act highlighted that the mentioned rules are liberal, which allowed the nationalist leaders to incorporate their debating and legislative skills and entered the legislatures themselves to represent the voice of several Indians. So, in a way, I mean, this particular act, the very allowing of Indians participating into a debate and discussion on even important matters, that itself was a very positive sign, with certain kind of criticism of the act, because ultimately people were able to voice their opinions in the legislature, which ultimately resulted into certain kind of galvanizing support in favor of the cause, the greater cause, which is freedom. So thank you so much with this segment on Indian Councils Act 1892. In the next segment, we will be talking about one of the very important movement called the Aligarh movement, uh, which was very crucial in terms of for Muslims of India. So we'll deal with that in the next lecture. Thank you.